I'm Kathy Kalashewski. I'm the executive editor of Innovation, and I want to thank you for joining us for today's lunch break. So, if you have any questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat. We'll get to as many of them as possible before the hour's up. We are recording our conversation today, and we'll be posting it on Bridge, Michigan this week. And you can subscribe to our newsletters, including our brand new Outdoors Life newsletter written by Laura, which she's going to tell you a little bit more about, and by visiting bridgemichigan.com to click for the sign up. In the chat, Asha, who's behind the scenes there, is going to be fielding your questions and serving them up to Laura. Like I said, we'll get to them, as many of them as possible, as well as dropping relevant information into the chat, so keep an eye out on that. Events like this one are made possible by the support of Bridge members. So if you'd like to join this membership community, we will drop a link in the chat so you can do so. A reminder to please stay muted throughout the conversation, and I'm going to now pass it over to Laura to get us started.
Hey, thank you so much, Kathy. And hey, everybody. My name is Laura Herberg. I'm one of Bridge, Michigan's newest reporters, not the newest, though the newest is also here on the call, my colleague Justin Hinckley. I came to Bridge at the end of January to be our first ever Outdoors Life reporter. I came here via WDET, which I was there for more than a decade, and which WDET is Detroit's NPR station, and then most recently was at Outlier Media, which is a nonprofit news service based in Detroit. I was a civic life reporter there, but I'm so happy to be on the team with Bridge and all the world-class reporters here, and I'm really excited and pinch myself that this is my job, that I get to explore outdoors life in our state. So thanks for coming along on the journey. We have a really esteemed panel here of Michigan tourist industry experts who I'm really excited to talk to, and that you guys are going to get to ask your questions. We're going to get to them in just a second, but first I have to do a little bit of housekeeping and make Kathy happy. So I'm just going to show my screen and real quick talk about a couple things. I wanted to mention to talk about the newsletter that we just launched that Kathy mentioned. So it's an Outdoors Life newsletter. We just launched it on Monday. And before we launched it, we put out a survey to see what folks wanted to see in it. And more than 500 of you responded and told us what you were interested in, and said, you want to hear about beautiful places and natural wonders, things that are under the radar, lakes, streams, and beaches, birds, animals, insects, plants, and trees. And as far as the features in the newsletter, you said you wanted to hear about interesting outdoor places, spotlights on birds, animals, or plants, upcoming outdoor events, summaries of Michigan outdoor news, and maybe a Trail of the Week spotlight. So we are going to put all these things and more in the newsletter, not all at once, but they'll be sprinkled here and there throughout. So if those things are things you're interested in, I do want to encourage you to sign up. I'm sure one of my colleagues will put a link in the chat, but basically you just go to our website and navigate to sign up. So you can see all our newsletters there. And I think the Outdoors Life one is at the very bottom. But so now you know about that. And one quick other thing before we get to the panel, sorry guys, captive audience. But I think you'll be interested in this if you don't already know about it. We're doing a really exciting project this summer called Michigan Dreaming. And basically, with your help, we're putting together the ultimate summer bucket list for Michigan. So we've had a survey out for a while, and we're just about to wrap it up. But I'm sure Asha or Kathy will paste the link in the chat. But basically, we want you to tell us, what's on your Michigan bucket list. We're looking for things that, we know there are a lot of wonderful things in our state that we all kind of know about, like Sleeping Bear Dunes and Pictured Rocks. We're looking for you guys to go a little bit beyond those. But if you have something in mind, we'd love for you to add it to the list. And then we'll be tightening it up into the ultimate list. And then this summer, I'll be telling the stories of these places and taking you guys along through the storytelling as well as there will be some opportunities for you to join me in person. So stay tuned for that. But now I definitely want to get back to the reason we're all here right now to talk about warmer times and the tourism season ahead. So let me go ahead and introduce our panel here. So first of all, we have Trevor Tkach. He is the president and CEO of Traverse City President and CEO of Traverse City Tourism. He's been in that role since 2016. Trevor was formerly the executive director of the National Cherry Festival. At one point, he was a senior account executive with the West Michigan Whitecaps baseball team in Grand Rapids, and he's a Traverse City native. So Trevor, thanks so much for joining us today. And next we have Janet Korn. She is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Initiatives for Experience Grand Rapids. And she's been there for more than 20 years. She's a recipient of the Pure Michigan Legacy Award, which honors leaders and visionaries in the Michigan tourism industry. And just in case you were wondering, she recommends the oatmeal stout at Founders Brewing Company if you're there. So if you're there and you need a rec, Janet's got you covered. So Janet, thanks so much for joining us. And we also have Brad Barnett. He's the executive director of Visit Keweenaw. And Brad started his role there in 2019. He formerly served as a senior planner with the Western Upper Peninsula Planning and Development Region. He spent a few years teaching at Michigan Tech, and Brad spent some time living in Alaska, but the Kentucky native was shocked when his Keweenaw neighbor told him that he should shovel his snow-covered roof or it might collapse. So Brad, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Happy to be here.
Great. So to my panelists, one thing that I asked you guys all to do was to send me a photo of somewhere in your region that was a little bit under the radar that you wanted to highlight. So I thought it'd be fun if we started there. So Trevor, I have yours all queued up here. So let's start with you and tell us about Grand Traverse Commons.
Yeah, so this is formerly an insane asylum here in Traverse City. It was almost demolished at one point when it was decommissioned, and a group of very thoughtful individuals in the community, stood by it and worked hard to make it a special place for everyone, including visitors. And so it's been rehabilitated. It's basically a quarter-mile brick structure that's kind of hidden. Most people come to Traverse City and they go to the waterfront, they go down to the beach, or they hit the downtown, but just a little bit off the beaten path, you'll find this gem, and it's got fabulous restaurants. It's got tours of the old architecture, including going down in the tunnels of the building. And it's set in nature. Its original design for the betterment of mental health of the patients. It was a sustainable farm. It's out in the woods, and there's a lot of trails and nature there. So it's an absolutely stunning building in a perfect backdrop. So I believe it's a hidden gem. I think a lot of people come to Traverse City and don't even know it's there.
Very cool. Thanks, Trevor. And then Janet, let's have you go next. Let me move over to your photo and tell us about your selection.
Sure. You asked for something a little under the radar, I think. And what came to mind for me is I'm hoping members of the listening audience are familiar with Grand Rapids being referenced as Beer City, USA. And I thought it would be fun if we talked instead about the hard cider that's being produced here in our region. So one of the things people may not know about Grand Rapids is how close the city of downtown is to our orchards and some key growing regions for apples and other fruits. And so we have the products right here. So it's such a sustainable item. And we're almost to what we have been offering to the public is a celebration of hard ciders through Cider Week GR, which actually starts on May 9th and runs through the 17th. And the story that I wanted to celebrate today was this particular farm, Ed Dunnebeck and Girls Farm Market and Pink Barrel Cellars. It's actually was purchased by Ed Dunnebeck 100 years ago. So it's been a family farm, same family farming the farm since 1925. And it is now, they have a little bit of a sad story as to how it was originally called Ed Dunnebeck and Sons Farm. And unfortunately, one of the sons passed away. So Ed's wife made the change to And Girls. And today it's now being farmed by one of Ed's granddaughters and their daughters. And so they do make craft beer there, but they also have cider, and it's a wonderful farm market. And they host, Ed and his wife actually met at a barn dance at the farm. And so they do host musical events in the summer, farm dinners at the market, and it's less than 10 miles from the center of downtown Grand Rapids.
Very cool. Thank you. And Brad, let's move on to, or yes, Brad, let's move on to yours. We got Sweet Town Gorge. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the Sweetown Gorge is actually located within the grander Mostahito Churning Rapids Trail System, which is literally inside the city of Hancock. This is a 2,000-acre wilderness experience that, frankly, visitors just don't know about. There are several, 25 kilometers of cross-country ski trails that are located here, but the crown jewel really is the Sweetown Gorge. Cut through basalt and bedrock. This is a great picturesque cross-country skiing and hiking experience. This photo that you see here is taken in the fall. So it's fantastic for mountain bike riding and hiking and exploring in the area. And what I love about this is that it's certainly known by the locals, but our visitors pass by it as they head up to Copper Harbor or seek out Brockway Mountain Drive. So I don't know if our community members are going to get upset with me about sharing this, again, 2,000-acre wilderness experience right outside of Hancock, but you asked the question, I had to deliver.
Well, thank you. And we'll get to that a little bit later on in the conversation about, that balancing act between promoting your regions and also, not blowing a spot up. But first, and Brad, we'll stay with you on this one. I want you guys to talk about how this isn't just about making sure that people know about the cool and wonderful, interesting places in your region. There's also dollars tied to this. So can you talk about how important the tourism industry is to the Keweenaw Peninsula?
Yeah, it's incredibly important, just like it is for the broader Upper Peninsula and across the state of Michigan. Tourism and travel visitor spending accounts for it's the third largest industry in the state of Michigan, and the Keweenaw it's probably second or even first in some counties, depending on how you look at it. Visitors spend around $150 million a year coming to the Keweenaw, and that's not, by comparison, that's not chump change for us. That's a significant amount of money. Our largest employer in the area is Michigan Technological University. They have about 1,700 employees. If you were to actually take that $150 million, that represents about around 2,500 automotive industry jobs in the state of Michigan, right? In terms of dollars and impacts, in terms of employee salaries, right? So, if you think about that industry, right, and visitors actually supporting that level of employment in the area, that's really impactful for an area that has about 37,000 residents, right? So it's a huge chunk of spending that happens in our area. And what I always like to share about the Keweenaw is that tourism is not new. This is not a new industry. We have records of individuals coming from Chicago in the 1870s because the Keweenaw was a place of respite with fresh air, and they were looking to escape, the smog of the industrialization of the Midwest, right? So this is an industry that we've grown up with, and will always be an integral part of the area.
Right. And Janet, what about in Grand Rapids? How important is tourism to the city of Grand Rapids and the surrounding region?
Well, just like Brad was talking about how important it is to his destination and the rest of the state, it's also a big part of our economy here as well. So what makes Grand Rapids, I think, a little different than these other two destinations, Trevor and Brad's, that they represent, is that we also have a large convention center here, and we have a large convention business, and we're hosting meetings of all sizes, really 12 months throughout the year. And that actually really helps us disperse travelers and the impact of tourism throughout the year. So we don't have quite the seasonality. More people travel in the summer. We just all like to take a trip in the summer. So, even if you take one trip during the year, it's probably in the summer. So our tourism does also increase during summer time periods, people visiting friends and relatives and going to explore things. But throughout Kent County, we have over 11,000 hotel rooms. And so our job at Experience Grand Rapids is to help all those business owners be successful. And then when people travel, they're also eating in restaurants, and they're visiting our cultural attractions, and they're going to concerts, and they're going to sports events and tournaments. And that's the economic impact. It's dispersed throughout really the entire area and shared to a lot of small business owners. It's over $1 billion impact for us each annual year. And, that's a significant thing. It's also a lot of jobs. So our numbers tell us that we have roughly over 50,000 people working in Kent County in the hospitality industry. And that's a lot of people. That's a big employer. It's hard to kind of like see it because they're not all working in one plant or one place. They're dispersed all over within the industry, but those are a lot of people. And so at Experience Grand Rapids, we're not only working to attract people to the area, but we're also trying to attract people to work in our hospitality industry, because we can bring people here, but we need people trained and inspired to deliver that guest experience to visitors when they are here.
And Trevor, what about up in Traverse City?
Well, it's definitely a big part of our economy. Roughly $1.2 billion is generated from the tourism economy in the 3-county area annually. In Traverse City and the Grand Traverse County area, it's about 1 in 10 jobs. But when you look at it more broadly, it's closer to 1 in 6. A lot of the rural areas, Leelanau County and Benzie County, the ratio is closer to about 1 in 4 people work in hospitality and tourism. So it's extremely critical to our region that it's strong and sustainable. I like Janet's comments about trying to make this a year-round business. Obviously, we know as Michiganders, and most anybody who knows our region, things peak in the summertime. And I think one of the biggest responsibilities for leaders like us on this panel are trying to make sure that we are spreading the demand throughout the year, because that's what sustains business. That's what keeps people fully employed. And so that's a forever issue with a market that has been traditionally so seasonal. So we work on that. And the other point I would like to get across is that we are looking for customers. We are looking to, invite as we're welcoming to everyone, but we're also trying to find people who share our values. We want to make sure that people understand that they are in sacred land when they come to Northern Michigan, when they step on the beaches here, when they go to the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore. These are special places that need to be taken care of. And no better way to communicate that than to have someone experience it. So while we want to have them come up and feed our economy with their dollars, we also need them to have an appreciation for it, help us to preserve and conserve these special places. So that's been a strong focus for us to make sure that those values are being shared and people understand, just how fragile this environment is and how we need to protect it into the future.
All right, Trevor, and let's stay with you for a minute. So, attracting tourists is important to your economy, as you all just said. But so what are people coming for? We're going into the spring, summer season. What are some trends of tourism in your area? What's hot? What should people be excited about in Traverse City this season?
Well, there's always a lot to take in. I mean, we're known for the great outdoor experience, and that's not unique to us. Brad, I think, will say he can play that hand better than me, but I think we're pretty competitive on that front. You know, what differentiates the Traverse City region, what continues to grow, is the, you know, food and wine experience. And we're actually we're creating a new event later in the summer that we will give more details on soon. But that is a very important part of our history and our culture here. You know, we are truly farm to table. A lot of people will say it, but all three of us on this panel are actually living it. We have the second most diverse agriculture of all 50 states. And Traverse City is leaning heavy into this right now. We've got 50 wineries. Each is very unique in its experience and its flavor. And so trying to make sure that we're communicating that well, not only to those who, you know, live in a drive region, but trying to help the world understand that this is a very special place where, you know, not too many places can you have this diverse of an agriculture experience, you know, paired up with all this wonderful, the surroundings of fresh water, the vistas, the freshwater beach experience. So for us, we continue to lean into the staples, but also Traverse City is definitely putting more attention to the food and wine experience, because again, that lines up with the values that matter to us and where we see potential moving forward.
And Janet, what about you? What are you looking at this summer and spring summer in Grand Rapids?
Well, we actually are looking forward to hosting a significant amount of meetings and conventions that are already scheduled. You know, the good thing about those is those plans do get made ahead. So then we do know that we have those guests coming into town. And then as far as what there is for leisure travelers to do, Frederick Meyer Gardens just last week or the week before released their summer schedule of concerts. So it's a really unique venue that seats just almost 2,000 people. They're having over 35 concerts there this summer. We have over 10 venues downtown Grand Rapids that also host music concerts and events. And there's a real energy around traveling for live entertainment. You know, I don't know. I don't necessarily want to like tag it to Taylor Swift and her popularity last year. She hasn't come to Grand Rapids yet. Of course, we would be happy to have her here, but there are a lot of people that are, you know, that's kind of the motivation to go somewhere at a particular time. We have made amazing cultural places for exploration here. If you're into presidential history, if you're into really our regional history, our public museum. And I mentioned Frederick Meyer Gardens concerts, but they actually are celebrating their 30th anniversary this year. And so if you have never been there, it's a must visit. If you haven't been there in a while, it will look very new to you. In the more recent times, they continue to add permanent pieces of art and special exhibitions. We have art all over our downtown. So I like to tell people the story of Meyer Gardens actually has 4 pieces of art by a Spanish artist by the name of Jaume Plensa. And we actually have a piece of his work that's on public display right in the center of our downtown. So there's this wonderful connection of being in the city and being surrounded by public art. And then we have these wonderful places for further exploring that. And, you know, everyone's talking about outdoors. We also have that here. So amazing parks. The river runs through the city, and we're really looking forward to some restoration projects in the river that will be they're certainly on the horizon.
Cool. And then, yeah, speaking of outdoors, Brad, what should folks be looking forward to if they're headed up to the Keweenaw Peninsula this spring, summer?
Well, I mean, we all love the outdoors. It's synergistic with the concept of Pure Michigan, and of course, the Keweenaw is no different in that respect. We are an outdoor recreation first product in terms of tourism, and we always will be. I thought you heard some synergy there, and one of those between our 3 destinations, which is access to water. In the Keweenaw, we have the Portage Lake Canal that cuts through the Keweenaw Peninsula. And so what we've seen over the last couple of years is an appetite and a thirst for what we hear as like coolcations, right? These are people who are throughout the Midwest that are seeking to escape warmer climates and destinations. So they're coming to the Keweenaw during the summer because it's relatively cooler. So they can get out and enjoy the outdoors, enjoy a drink on the patio, but they're not necessarily sweating in under 110-degree temperatures. So that's something that they continue to seek as they travel up north. Another thing that we've really experienced in the Keweenaw is the advent of dark sky tourism, right? So dark sky tourism is certainly not new, but because of the prevalency for solar maximums that have been really driving all these amazing northern lights displays across the country, we're seeing additional tourists come to our area because they want that chance to capture and experience the northern lights. And there's no better place in Michigan than the Keweenaw Peninsula because of our lack of light pollution. So with the Keweenaw International Dark Sky Park in Copper Harbor, and then again, just being surrounded by wilderness and Lake Superior, it's a fantastic opportunity. If you don't get a chance to see the northern lights, then you're certainly going to be treated to beautiful displays of things like the Milky Way galaxy with the naked eye, being able to view that. So we're seeing an advent in that, right? Which is actually pretty complementary because in the Keweenaw, we're not really known for nightlife experiences, maybe not as much as like Grand Rapids and Traverse City, but this gives an extra activity for visitors who are coming up here to hit the trails. Well, now they have something that they can do during the nighttime as well, which is really fun and exciting. The other experience that we've seen an uptick in the Keweenaw is this idea of enhanced wellness experiences. People are seeking the opportunity. They've always sought the opportunity to really relax and enjoy respite. That's what nature does for people. But there's been a resurgence of sauna culture. In the Keweenaw, we have a high concentration of American Finns. And so the idea of taking a sauna, going out and hitting the trails, and coming back and really enjoying that relaxation experience, it's both a cultural experience, then also more of a wellness experience because of our Finnish heritage in the area. We have the new Nordic spa in Mount Bohemia, which continues to grow and become very popular. But we're also seeing the development of new public saunas down in Hancock. So again, marrying that idea of the great outdoors, culture, respite, and relaxation and wellness, that's what we're seeing in our markets.
Very cool. And if folks want to read more about how it's true, the UP has a dark sky park, but that they're technically banned in the area on state lands. I did a story on that a couple months ago, so you can look that one up. But so, we've been talking about, reasons for people to come and visit your regions. But going back to that little seed I dropped earlier, there is this balance, I imagine, where you don't want things to become overcrowded. Maybe you want to make sure locals still feel like they can enjoy the things that brought them or kept them in the region. One of my colleagues, Paula Gardner, did a great story a few months back on Black Rocks up in Marquette and how the area got so popular that the Tourism Bureau launched a Respect Marquette County campaign trying to tell the tourists, like, we want you to come, but you got to respect the area. So I just wanted to pick each of your brains, and Brad, we'll start with you. Is there anything like that in your region, or are there other tensions that maybe you're having to balance as you're trying to bring people to your area? So Brad, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll lead off with just reiterating what Trevor mentioned, which is, our goal obviously is to foster this incredibly important industry, but we also want to make sure we're upholding our community values and norms while we're inviting guests to come into our community and experience the Keweenaw. So just like any tourism destination, there are things that we can do better and seek and work on. And so what's interesting about the Keweenaw Peninsula is that some of the things that we're best known for are also things that add challenges. We're a remote destination, right? People come up here because they want a digital detox. So things like cell connection, right? People expect it to be here, but when they don't have it and they're reliant upon it, there are challenges. Like, where's the closest gas station? Where's the trailhead? I need to contact public services, but they can't do it, right? So helping educate and inform community members about those unique challenges and opportunities in the Keweenaw. We love leaning on that idea that, you know, you'll lose cell phone service while you're out here. That's a good thing, because that way you can fully sort of detox from that everyday experience, but also be mindful of that and plan ahead. So, you know, it's constantly an educational opportunity here with, you know, our community members, with our visitors. And then part of our role as destination marketing organizations, and I think, you know, Trevor does a great job of this and Janet does a great job of this, is being advocates within those community conversations about those critical services that perhaps we need to improve upon, right? So Visit Keweenaw is certainly an advocate for enhanced communication technology services. We don't want to see cell phone towers going up on top of Brockway Mountain, though, right? So how can we find those compromises from a technological standpoint, making sure that we have public safety in mind, but also making sure we're keeping our visitor needs in mind as well, and then providing that educational role. So certainly, as a tourism destination, no one gets to the Keweenaw by accident. We like to say that, right? You literally have to go out of your way to get to the Keweenaw Peninsula. We like it that way. And so do our visitors. So we don't want to ruin the product by having millions of people up here, but we're also here to welcome people who really gonna, you know, embrace those values of Michigan and embrace the values of the Keweenaw communities.
And Janet, so Grand Rapids is a city, so I'm curious if you guys have any issues with overcrowding, or if not, if there are other issues related to the tourism industry in your region.
Well, we have less challenges because you can access Grand Rapids from a variety of highways. And so I would say what impacts us on those highways is when there's road construction in those highways. And that is a real thing that happens here. So that could be a challenge for visitors, but there are usually detours. So we don't really have we do have some traffic here, but not like major cities. So I think that's a sweet spot for a mid-sized city, is that if we have it, it's short or it's potentially temporary. And then, like I mentioned earlier, our convention business really helps spread out some of the impact of travel and tourism here. But one thing that is underway here is some pretty significant investments in our river edges trails and connecting our trail network in Kent County to Ottawa County's trails, and really extending our trails along the Grand River all the way to to Lowell, essentially. And I think there's a level of responsibility for a city with trails to help educate the public about how to care for those trails, because likely those same residents or visitors that are using our trails are going to travel other places in Michigan. And it's not just let's respect trails in northern Michigan and in the Upper Peninsula. They're all public spaces that need to be cared for. So I think there is a level of opportunity for us to help educate the millions of visitors that would be using our trails and networks on how best to care for Michigan's trails throughout the state.
And Trevor, feel free to, weigh in on overcrowding if you want, but I know when you and I talked earlier, you had mentioned that one issue, might be the right word, had to do with short-term rentals and how you would like to see some improvements there. Oh, sorry, I'm in a hotel and I requested late checkout, but I think that they have forgotten. But Trevor, why don't you take it away? I'm going to go on mute and talk about the short-term rental issue if you'd like.
Yeah, well, we are Michigan in the definitely Lake Michigan side of the state is very well known for its vacation rental options, and short-term rentals have definitely become more and more popular over the past 10 to 15 years with the advent of Airbnb and VRBO, far more accessible. And so that we see that as value added for a visitor. It's another option for them to experience our region. It's another opportunity. Sadly, in our state, I would say our state's probably a little bit behind the times in regulation and creating a fair and equitable playing field. And that hurts businesses that are established, that have been in operation for many years. And it also it's kind of unfair to those who want to get into the business of short-term rental. I mean, you want to know what the rules are and feel like you're a part of the system that you're working in. And I think there's some gaps in our state that probably need to be addressed to help that. That said, I mean, short-term rental is here to stay. It should be here. It just needs to be better understood, I think, collectively. And with so many unique municipalities, each township has its own rules and whatnot. It just makes it very difficult to kind of manage it on a more holistic front. But that said, I mean, I think our community understands the importance of the tourist dollar coming into market. I shared that earlier. 50% of the business that comes into downtown is from outside of 100 miles. So we know that we need those visitors. But kind of to Janet and Brad's point, you're trying to spread that demand throughout the year. We talk a lot about what other things we could do in the we call them shoulder seasons or off season, off peak times. Can we have more indoor experiences? Can we help create more conference space or maybe indoor sports opportunities that help us to take full advantage of the assets we have, the hotels and the short-term rentals. So trying to find a way to spread that demand is forever going to be something that we're focused on here in Traverse City. But, I also worked at the Cherry Festival for a lot of years, and I'm a native of Traverse City. So I had access to survey information from, 50 years ago now. And I'm here to tell you that traffic and parking have been the number one issue of locals for a very long time. This is not a new thing. So I think it's just keeping the conversation with the community and trying to find ways to alleviate some of those pain points that exist during our peak seasons.
And I do want to remind folks that you have the opportunity to ask these tourism experts your own questions, and we're going to get there in just a second. But first, I have one last question. But if you have a question, please drop it in the chat. So let's talk about the Trump administration. And I'm wondering if any of you have begun to see ways that the administration is helping or hurting or may help or hurt the tourism industry in your region. So Trevor, let's start with you.
Nothing like a lightning rod question there, Laura. That's really kind of you to start with me. This isn't, I have no political statement here. Tourism is not, it shouldn't be political. It's something that everyone should embrace. Travel is important to help us understand other cultures, to understand the world, and have a better perspective on life. So hopefully everyone's embracing that concept. Some of the things that we've keyed in on to, that potentially could be challenging. We're very dependent upon our National Park Service. The Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore is very important to us. And some of the federal funds associated with the national parks have been in question. And so we've advocated for that, but that's not unique to this particular administration. There's been many years where we've had to chime in and show our support for that. And I'm optimistic that we're in a good spot. I would say internationally, and I'm only speaking from what I understand and observe through groups like Destinations International and U.S. Travel, some of the bigger associations that Traverse City Tourism participates in, that some of the, unrest internationally, some of the market responses to policy has had an impact on travel. It's a reality. You can see it. It's true. In fact, we just got a survey results from Longwoods International the other day regarding Canadian travelers, and it was showing that there was a significant dip in interest from Canadians to come to the United States. That's just a fact. So there's challenges in global economies and policy, those things do have effect on travel, and so we're anticipating that it will, and we're trying to find ways to respond to that and make sure that we still have a strong year and make sure our locals stay fully employed throughout the year.
And let's mix things up, and I'm going to shoot to Brad because I wonder if you might have something to say related to that.
Undoubtedly. I mean, we certainly share our concerns regarding funding for the national park system. We have two national parks, our Royal National Park and the Keweenaw National Historical Park within our footprint. Both of them are attractions that support the visitor economy. So far, we haven't seen any significant changes that will impact this summer, as far as we understand, based on speaking with representatives from both of those organizations. But of course, we're mindful of funding cuts, just like Trevor said. Under any administration, you're going to be sensitive to things like that, and certainly this has been in the national sort of narrative significantly over the last few months. So we are keeping an eye on that. Another potential issue, especially in the Keweenaw areas, that we are reliant upon guest worker programs, which are international individuals who come in through J1 visas or H2B visas to help support the visitor economy. And so we're keeping a close eye on the amount of visas that are available to help support it, because we do require a larger workforce, particularly in the summer months, to help support many of our seasonal businesses. So that is something that we can imagine, may be affected moving forward here. So those are the two issues. Clearly, we're looking at the broader economy and the impacts to discretionary spending and income. We're not an international market like Traverse City or Grand Rapids. So for us, the impacts to international travel aren't quite as substantive for our sort of season and our local businesses. But, at the end of the day, travel is about discretionary income. So as long as the economy is strong and doing well, then I suspect we'll continue to do as well.
But Brad, you say you're not international, but what about Canada? Do you guys get very many?
We're probably closer to Canada than almost any other part of Michigan, aside from like the Sioux, but we are a drive destination predominantly. And so it takes about 13 to 14 hours of driving to get from the population centers of Ontario to Canada, or to the Keweenaw. So it's a very small market segment for us in terms of overnight leisure travel.
All right, thank you for that. And Janet, what about you? Are you seeing any impacts or anticipating any impacts of moves from the Trump administration on Grand Rapids area tourism?
At this point, we don't have anything definitive that we can report. We're looking forward to a strong summer travel season. Currently, our hotel revenue numbers, which is a key way for us to monitor on a timely basis, are trending ahead of last year, which was a record year for us. So that feels optimistic. Brad and Trevor alluded to the discretionary income. That is what people use when they're traveling, because it's not shelter and food and things they have to pay for. But people like to travel, and they like to go visit friends and relatives, and they like to create memories. And I think people will find ways to still take those trips. They just might spend a little less than what they have in other time periods. And I think Grand Rapids, we look at ourselves in the Kent County area as an affordable destination to get to. We do have an airport with really great air service, but we have a lot of visitors that also drive here. And, we're just 2.5 hours from the Southeast Michigan market and 3 hours from the Chicago area, a little over 4 hours from Indianapolis. So when you think about where we're located, there's large populations of people. And it's interesting to me when I travel around the country, the people who tell me they have a friend that lives here or a relative that lives here. And so because our local residents love their place they live, they do a really excellent job of helping us really inspire visitors, and they invite their friends and relatives to come here. So we remain optimistic. It's hard to look into the future. So, things can happen. So.
Thanks. And we received a question from Bill in the chat, and Bill is wondering how the tourism industry is going to mitigate the impact of the recent ice storm across northern Michigan. I think you all, and correct me if I'm wrong, were relatively unscathed, but I'd like to give you a chance to weigh in, or perhaps you might have some insight for some of your industry colleagues. Does anybody want to jump in?
Trevor, do you want to jump in? I think you're closest to home there.
Yeah, Traverse City area was really lucky. It kind of went right around us. Our friends in Charlevoix and Petoskey, Gaylord, and all the way over to Lake Huron and up to the Straits were really devastated by this. So, we are happy to hear from them that they are in 110% cleanup mode right now. And Laura, you could probably speak to it more than I could since you're there right now. But spirits are high. It was a once in a century sort of storm, and so I think a lot of businesses were affected negatively. But I think that there's a high spirits that things will get back on track quickly.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to add to the role of organizations like ours have really changed over the last 5 to 10 years, and historically we've focused on marketing to visitors, and that's still a strong role of what we do, but increasingly destination marketing organizations are key conduits for community conversations and galvanizing support. And I've seen evidence of that with this, again, the ice storm. So how do we mitigate impacts? Well, obviously driving economic activity is one key piece, but also, rallying support, providing accurate information, helping connect businesses with resources. Those are things that we do as well often cases. And so, it's a role that's probably not spoken enough about in terms of what DMOs are doing across the state of Michigan, but it's certainly an important task and responsibility that we have.
And DMOs, will you define?
Destination marketing organizations. Yeah.
Thank you. And Bill, I'll just add, because the reason I'm in a hotel is because I am in Gaylord right now, reporting on the status of trails post ice storm. Because what I'm hearing from folks is that, now that a lot of the essential services are back in place, they are moving more to looking at trails, not just for the tourism season ahead, although that is a big piece of it. They want to be ready as quickly as they can be for the population as they come up here. But I've heard for the locals too. I talked to an emergency manager with Emmett County, and he was like, for the mental health of the residents here, we want to make sure that they can use the trails. And while cleanup efforts have commenced, I just talked to someone with the DNR this morning, and they were saying it'll probably be months before all the trails will be cleaned up. And so you can find more details from that story comes out later this week, but there are a snippet with, at least with the DNR, there's volunteer opportunities, but they haven't, they're not bringing on the public yet because they're still really working to do the big stuff with heavy machinery. So the trails are still pretty bad up here. So that's a little update there, but thanks for your question, Bill. Want to move to Natalie, who asked a question in the chat. Natalie asked, are there new houses being built to hold the people that live and work in the area, or is there a housing issue? Maybe Brad, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, so I will say that we're finally in the Keweenaw seeing a market response to the need for housing in our region, and to really understand the lay of the land. The vast majority of housing in the Keweenaw was built in the late 1800s and early 1900s as a response to the copper mine booms of that era. And so what we are seeing now is that housing prices have come up, which obviously have an impact in terms of affordability, both for residents, long-term renters, things along those lines. So there is so the yin to the yang market response to new housing being built. But I certainly don't want to mitigate or undersell the impact of housing affordability for our workforce. It is a challenge in the Keweenaw, even though that we are under our home values are actually still under the state average and national average. It's still high for our area. So it's a challenge that we're working on.
And Trevor or Janet, anything to add on the issue of housing? You guys good? Oh, go ahead.
You want to say something, Trevor, and then I have a couple things.
Yeah, I will share that, when it comes to the correlation between short-term rental and what we deem as affordable housing, I think that's relative to whomever we're talking to. But a lot of the properties that are used for short-term rental, for VRBO, Airbnb, probably aren't affordable housing for a workforce. So when we think about vacation rentals, homes on the shores of the lake, those you know, those probably weren't going to be properties that were going to be in the system for the workforce typically. But I wouldn't disagree that, you know, our attention goes towards the things that provide the most return. So if I'm an investor, I want to get the most for my money. And yeah, clearly short-term rental is generating good dollars for a lot of investors right now. So I think trying to help incentivize, and we were seeing more of that in the Traverse City area. There's a pilot program that allows payment in lieu of taxes. So we're seeing builders build more accessible housing projects because of those types of tools in our state. MISHDA is leaning into this and giving rural Michigan more options. And I will say there's a lot of hoteliers and restaurateurs, others in the hospitality industry that are investing in these things themselves too. They're trying to solve the problem, not be a part of it. So I you know, give a lot of credit to them. They never want to be front line on these sorts of things or be called out. But in general, I will say I'm proud of our industry for stepping up and trying to solve this. There is no magic, you know, wand or silver bullet for it. And this is not unique to tourist towns like Traverse City. This is a universal issue that we're trying to deal with. Housing is expensive and it's hard to find.
And Janet?
Yeah, affordable housing is definitely something that both the city and the county here are really committed to, and they've been working really hard to incentivize that and encourage that in places where I think it's also important that those affordable housing options are near services. So they need to be located places where there's public transportation. They need to be located near food stores and places where they can really fully function and live. So not only are private developers working on this, but we also have a variety of nonprofits that are also working to fill affordable housing here. There's challenges to that, of course. I mean, building hasn't gotten any less expensive. Land hasn't really gotten less expensive. So it does take time, but we have some really good community leadership, I think, working on this. And our situation here, because we're not as seasonal from a tourism perspective, is this isn't just a summer tourism challenge for us. This is a all year long challenge for us. So, but I do think we have made some strides forward in this, but of course there remains a lot of work to do. Grand Rapids it's exciting to be here. It's a place that's attracting people to want to move here, but then that just puts more pressure on where are they going to live.
Let's move to our final question. This was submitted by a reader in advance, and it looks like it's just for you, Brad. This comes from Bob, and he's wondering, or he asked, we're spending 5 nights in the Keweenaw Mountain Lodge the first week in June, primarily to do day hikes with their dog. What are some can't miss trails for when they are there in June? Or they're staying at the Keweenaw Mountain Lodge? What comes to mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, the cool thing about the Keweenaw Mountain Lodge is they've got about 10 miles of trail on property that are exceptional, so you can't go wrong there. But if you're staying up there, there's a new trail called the Berry Picker Trail. It's something that Visit Keweenaw helped fund the development last summer, so it's new. It takes you up the side of Brockway Mountain Drive for some beautiful views about 600 feet above Copper Harbor and Lake Superior. So that's awesome. Estevant Pines is a classic trail in the Keweenaw. Old growth white pines that are about 120 feet tall and 250 years old. Some of the last old growth white pines in the Upper Peninsula. So go check those out, Bob, and thanks for the question.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. We're coming up on the end here. So I just want to thank our panelists so much for taking the time out of their busy schedules to share their insight and expertise with us. Thank you to all of you attendees for joining and for asking questions. A quick note, Natalie, I see you have a follow-up, and I'll get to you on that. But yeah, just thanks everybody so much for being here. I'm going to toss it to Kathy real quick before we wrap up.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks to all our panelists. Just a lot of great information for those of us that are thinking about what our summer plans are going to be. And as somebody who has spent a lot of time in Traverse City, who lived in Grand Rapids, and has a son up in Marquette, I love all of your regions. So thank you again. I also want to thank all of the folks that joined us for this afternoon call and taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us. I'm going to remind you that we're going to be posting a recording of today's program on our website and on our app and through our social media channels this week. So if you joined us late or you know others who care about this issue, please send the link along and they can access that conversation at their convenience. Next month, join us for a conversation, which next month is tomorrow, but at the end of next month, for a conversation with our new regional editor, Justin Hinckley, where we're going to discuss the state of local news from the up north region to the UP and western parts of the state and some of the important stories impacting those regions. So stay tuned for more details. And I want to remind people to subscribe to our newsletters, including our recently launched Bridge Michigan Outdoors, authored by our very own Laura Herberg, and follow us on our social media channels. So with that, thanks again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.